I realized a number of years ago that we were going to need our government, it's plural, to get their shit together.
Hi everyone, my name is Nikolai and I'm a video producer here at Mashable. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about what our collective future looks like, but from today's perspective, because we're finding ourselves in very uncharted waters. I wanted to do a video series that looks at how we can create a more sustainable and more equitable future.
It was not going to happen on its own because the incentives that politicians have is just to sort of go tit for tat and like have the pendulum swing back and forth regardless of whether the problems are getting solved or not. I was fed up. If you're fed up too, let's do something about it.
I want to start this by saying thanks for coming on. You're my first guest in this new series called The Future We Want. And before we delve deeper into your ideas about how to create a more sustainable and equitable future, I want to start off by talking about the present. Do you see a way forward?
You would ideally resolve it through changes in political leadership, and then those new leaders would enact certain policies. I obviously champion universal basic income, which I believe is going to be necessary to help resolve how 40 million Americans are going to put food on the table. But it also will go a really great length in helping resolve the systemic poverty that gives rise to people being victimized by police. I mean, George Floyd was killed because he tried to use a counterfeit $20 bill. He might not even have known. So that there's material deprivation that is driving many of these issues. That is actually a choice we can make as a society. My great hope is that we just choose to abolish poverty, and we can do it tomorrow if enough of us get together to do it. And that, to me, is the best path forward. Is that we elect new leaders who do things and see things very, very differently, and we can modify our capital flows very, very quickly if we so choose. We all just saw it. We just printed several $1 trillion primarily for big banks and corporations. There is no reason why we cannot simply give people $2,000 a month to meet their basic needs. $2,000 a month into the hands of the average American. They're going to spend most all of it in their community. And so where does it go? To daycare centers, to local nonprofits, to Little League signups, to the local restaurant and bar or food truck. We can make the economy trickle up and rebuild our communities in ways that actually match up to our needs and values. You would give rise to this massive boom in entrepreneurship because all of a sudden millions of Americans would know that their basic needs were going to be met next month, and they'd start thinking, okay, what should I do?
In this country, prosperity has never trickled down from the wealthy few. Prosperity has always come from the bottom up, from a strong and growing middle class.
We would particularly unlock women and underrepresented minorities because they have lower levels of savings and access to investment capital and the rest of it. So they've been stifled in terms of entrepreneurship and value creation. So it's, again, this is just a social choice. This is our great hope. It's very, very dark if we don't evolve, because if we just look around and say, well, everyone's on their own, you lost your job to a robot, then that's on you. Then you're going to see millions of people rioting in the streets over time because it's that or die. And so, that it is that stark. Like, I obviously campaigned on this for months and months. The timeline just accelerated dramatically because of COVID-19. So we really have to choose to evolve very, very quickly, or we're going to see America disintegrate before our eyes.
As the coronavirus struck and the chaos that commenced, it's incredibly easy to look at the future as diagnosed by you and think that we're pretty much doomed, that there's very little that we can do to fix things now, that it's too late. But I know that you're a solution-based person, and I know that you look at problems and try to find fixes for them. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to outline a vision of an alternative future, not just for America, but for the world, where we use this opportunity of global chaos to really address some long-term issues that have remained dormant and unresolved.
We just have to move as fast as we can and start measuring our economy by how we are doing instead of capital efficiency. Because the truth is that robots and machines and AI are going to do more and more of the work. Some of us will benefit from that because we own stock and we like own the machines or whatever. But we have to look up and say, like, well, using that as your measuring stick is just a massive disaster. And we should start measuring our health, our mental health, our freedom from substance abuse, like our social mobility, our freedom from getting brutalized by police, and use these as measurements for our well-being, because capital efficiency is going to turn on us. And people who watch Mashable know this. I mean, you all are like tech heads. You understand that technology is getting more powerful and more capable in a way that's unprecedented in human history. And our governments are decades behind the curve. They don't understand it. They don't get it. We have to make them get it. And if they do get it, then great things are possible, despite all of the breakdowns and the trauma and the displacement and the despair. It's like the only hope is that you accelerate the solutions as well as the problems.
One of the biggest problems we face today and going forward is the absolutely unprecedented economic inequality on a global scale. And that has a lot to do with the specific merging between capitalism and the technological revolution that we're undergoing. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that a certain evolution of capitalism, I guess what you call human capitalism, or just a transition towards different type of capitalism in the future, can result in a very different way of tracking and talking about progress in general, economic progress specifically?
I love technology. I love entrepreneurship. But we just have to know that our energies have been focused on market-based problems. Like, if I could solve a problem that makes someone a lot of money, then investors will give me that money. But if it's a problem that no one cares about, like, let's diffuse. And you could even throw climate change into this too. It's like, it's a very expensive problem, but like the market mechanics aren't as clear. And so investors will shy away from it in many cases. So that's why it takes someone with a massive appetite for risk like Elon Musk to like try and go into it. So the goal should be that we start using our energies to solve non-market based problems. Like, how do you improve the way of life of an Uber driver who just lost his job, or a cashier whose store closed forever? How do you improve our collective mental health? How do you make our kids stronger and happier instead of more anxious and depressed? These are massive problems, climate change, social decay, that we're not actually trying to solve meaningfully. Like, we're trying to solve these other problems. And again, I love technology and progress. And the goal has to be that we're using our energies to solve the real broad human problems of our time. If we do that, then the sky remains the limit. And that's what I'm committed to. That's what I'm passionate about. I hope that people see me as like a bridge figure between the world of technology and entrepreneurship and the world of politics and policy, because I realized a number of years ago that we were going to need our governments plural to get their shit together. It was not going to happen on its own, because the incentives that politicians have is just to sort of go tit for tat and like have the pendulum swing back and forth regardless of whether the problems are getting solved or not. I was fed up. If you're fed up too, let's do something about it. Let's fight for a future that we can be proud of. I'm a parent. Some of you are either, you're either parents, or you're like thinking you may be a parent someday. But let's leave a world that we're still proud of for our kids. It's a very tall order, so we need everyone watching this to help.